In a dying world where humans have driven Earth's animals and forests to the brink, silent aliens descend, not to conquer, but to save. One by one, creatures vanish from cages, forests regrow overnight, and entire ecosystems rise from extinction. But humanity won't give up its dominance without a fight. As the aliens escalate their rewilding, humans launch a brutal campaign to reclaim control, even if it means burning the world down. In this gripping three-part saga, the battle for Earth isn't over territory, it's over who gets to decide the future of life itself. And the aliens aren't here to ask permission. The end of the wild did not come with fire or thunder. It came with indifference. Forests once stretched across continents like green oceans. Now they survived only as isolated groves, sanctuaries behind walls, genetic libraries of bark and leaf. The great herds of the plains had long since vanished beneath asphalt and concrete. Rivers, once alive with fish and myth, had been dammed, drained, or poisoned. Coral reefs were bleached white like bone. And the last blue whale that sang across oceans had not been heard in years. Humans had not noticed the silence. Not truly. For they had filled it with noise of their own, machines and markets, supply chains, and the hum of synthetic ecosystems made to resemble the real. They had reshaped Earth in their image. What remained of the animal kingdom existed in pens and cages. The once majestic were now commodities. Elephants bred in captivity for display. Gorillas engineered to be docile enough for safe observation. Birds with clipped wings. Frogs labeled by barcodes. There were laws, of course. Treaties, conservation efforts, rotating funds and eco-certifications. But beneath the surface, beneath the language of stewardship, the killing never stopped. Habitat loss was not a tragedy. It was a business model. And so it went, until the strangers came. They arrived without spectacle. No grand fleets. No glowing skies. No transmissions or greetings. Just a silent, pulsing presence. It began in Madagascar. On a morning drenched in coastal haze, poachers in the Ainasi forests went silent, their traps broken and their weapons jammed. Hidden cameras later showed strange figures, tall, fluid, glinting with a metallic iridescence, moving through the trees without breaking a single twig. Lemurs, once fleeing from any human scent, approached these beings without fear. And then they were gone. Not dead. Not taken in the human sense. Simply absent. Not even footprints left behind. Similar events followed across the globe. A tiger disappeared from a zoo enclosure in Moscow. Dolphins vanished mid-performance in a Florida theme park, pools left rippling. Labs reported genetic specimens erased, even from backups. Drone footage from a black market wildlife operation in Thailand showed creatures of pure light entering a compound, disabling machinery with a pulse, and then dissolving into the night with all the animals following. The footage was dismissed. Deepfakes. Hoaxes. Anti-industry propaganda. Until the disappearances continued. Within weeks, over 10,000 animal specimens from zoos, labs, parks, farms, and private collections had vanished. Entire rare herds gone. No ransom, no demand. Just empty stalls and quiet shadows where life used to be. Then the forests returned. At first, it seemed like a trick of time. A patch of scorched Australian land, long abandoned after bushfires, suddenly bloomed again, ferns unfurling in patterns unseen since the early Miocene. In Siberia, permafrost opened like a wound to reveal reindeer paths, refrozen but clear. In Oregon, a logging zone found its machines tangled in new growth, vines wrapping steel like ivy on forgotten ruins. Scientists scrambled for explanations. Accelerated regrowth due to engineered soil. Biogenic modification. Climate anomalies. But nothing fit. Because the data showed not just growth, but restoration. Species of flora previously extinct, ecosystems rebuilt from patterns lost in the fossil record. Someone, or something, was remaking the wild. And they were doing it fast. The world's attention pivoted slowly, as it always did. The first to take interest were the conservation networks, whose field teams found themselves obsolete. They tracked nests that no longer needed watching. They monitored breeding groups that had already vanished. In remote places, rangers found alien structures buried deep within reforested regions, towers like vines turned to glass, broadcasting inaudible frequencies. They could not be touched, moved, or studied. No technology could penetrate their strange material. Global agencies sent probes. Satellites tried to scan them. AI tools tried to decipher a signal. All failed. But animals responded. Some instinct deeper than evolution made them listen. Herds changed migration routes to orbit these new sanctuaries. Insects swarmed them in patterns that resembled sacred geometry. Packs and flocks formed spontaneously, crossing former war zones and industrial corridors without hesitation, as if summoned. A global pattern emerged. Wherever the aliens went, they did not claim land, but healed it. They rebuilt entire biomes with precision beyond any earthly science. Species long extinct, by millions of years in some cases, were spotted, documented, and then lost again into alien forests. The process accelerated. Rainforests regrew where oil rigs once stood. River deltas reappeared in cities. Mountains reshaped themselves along ancestral lines. Coral returned in violent eruptions of color, overtaking undersea cables and shipwrecks. The wild, it seemed, was rising. And not with human permission. The economic implications were immediate. Livestock industries suffered first, millions of animals vanishing without explanation. AI monitoring systems, fences, electric restraints, all rendered useless. Factory farms were emptied overnight. In regions where cattle and poultry had been genetically modified to grow rapidly, entire warehouses were left hollow, machinery unmoving, lights blinking in confusion. Then came the hunting lodges. Luxury reserves where endangered species had been bred for sport collapsed, their game returned to alien care. Gamekeepers vanished, some reportedly last seen staring at brilliant lights in the canopy before communications went dead. Those who still profited from animal suffering cried sabotage. Terrorism. Biomanipulation. The aliens were called invaders. Earth's birthright was under attack, they said. But the aliens never attacked. They never replied. They continued their mission, unstoppable and serene. Nations reacted unevenly. Some welcomed the strange rewilding as a cosmic gift. Others demanded control, seeking ways to capture or weaponize the phenomena. Private corporations sent covert teams to try to trap or kill the alien beings. Every attempt failed. No alien could be held. No device could harm them. Bullets slowed in air. Lasers bent off course. Mechs short-circuited when near them. Even nuclear threats were ignored. The aliens did not defend themselves. They simply moved past the aggression as though it never existed. Yet they continued to remove animals. Not all. Only the ones threatened, caged, commodified. And that, more than anything, enraged the powerful. Because this wasn't an invasion. It was an intervention. On Wall Street, investors panicked. The economic spine of animal exploitation cracked as futures in leather, beef, poultry, exotic pets, pharmaceuticals, and testing all crumbled. Billions in value disappeared. The biotech sector collapsed when gene sequences stolen by the aliens rendered patents obsolete. An emergency council was formed, comprised of governments, military-industrial alliances, corporate conglomerates, and technocrats. They named the phenomenon ESI. Extraterrestrial species interference. Secret briefings declared the aliens hostile. Plans were made. They would fight not to survive, but to retain control. A coalition called the Preservation Defense League, PDL, formed. It declared that the Earth belonged to humankind, and that its resources, living and otherwise, were not to be removed or restored without sovereign permission. They made it a matter of dominion. Religious groups declared the aliens demons, eco-terrorists, false prophets. Other groups declared them angels, saints, holy restorers. Doomsday cults erupted. Cities burned. Militias formed. It was no longer about the animals. It was about who got to decide what Earth was for. In the Appalachian regions, early skirmishes took place. Armed PDL units moved into rewilded zones. They brought tanks, drones, sonic weapons, and biothermal mines. Their targets were not just the aliens, but the animals now sheltering under their care. They planned to retake the land, reassert human authority. What happened next was not war. It was revelation. Every weapon jammed. Every drone crashed. The forest itself seemed alive, not with hostility, but resistance. Roots tangled feet. Moss deadened sound. Fog thickened to hide paths. The soldiers were not attacked. They were disoriented. Hours passed. Then days. And when they were found, wandering and weeping, they remembered nothing, except light and the feeling of being watched by something older than Earth. In other regions, things escalated. Aggressive human incursions were countered by passive alien defenses. Magnetic fields. Inertial displacement. Electromagnetic feedback. No blood was shed. But no victory came either. Animals continued to vanish from captivity. Forests continued to grow where no seed had been planted. Humanity, for all its power, found itself irrelevant. Resistance mutated. Some groups joined the aliens. Eco-defectors, scientists, former zookeepers, farmers who repented. They began dismantling human industries from the inside. Sabotaging labs. Freeing animals. Destroying hunting camps. The world fractured. One side fought to control life. The other fought to preserve it. And the aliens? They never picked up a weapon. They didn't need to. They had already changed the game. By the end of the first year, a third of the planet's wildlife had disappeared, rescued, stolen, hidden, no one could say. Entire regions were sealed off by alien energy veils, semi-permeable fields that allowed animals to pass but rejected anything with carbon-built machines. Strange new biomes emerged. Floating islands of fungal forests. Underground arcs filled with hybrid ecosystems. Artificial skies within stone domes. Time ran differently in these places. Weather followed no known pattern. Creatures thought extinct swam again in deep alien lakes. The human world, by contrast, had grown more desperate. Starvation crept into agricultural systems reliant on animal byproducts. Fashion collapsed. Meat became a luxury item traded in dark markets. Some tried to clone the missing species, but the clones died. The genetic spark had been removed. The Earth no longer belonged solely to humans. It had never, really. But now the balance was tilting. Not toward war. Toward reckoning. The planet convulsed beneath two competing instincts, dominion and preservation. As more species vanished into the protection of the alien force and entire ecosystems rebuilt themselves with surreal speed, humanity fractured. Entire governments collapsed under the weight of ecological destabilization. Economies, particularly those rooted in agriculture, meat, pharmaceuticals, and animal-based production, imploded. Food chains that had taken centuries to industrialize were shredded by an invisible hand that removed the foundational species like bricks from the bottom of a tower. The aliens had not fired a shot, yet the world fell into chaos. The United Human Authority, UHA, a newly formed supranational military alliance, emerged from the ashes of the old global order. Backed by surviving corporations, energy blocks, and defense contractors, it promised to reassert anthropic supremacy on Earth. Their enemy was not any single species or country, but the philosophy of alien stewardship, what they called extraterrestrial ecological totalitarianism. They rejected the notion that Earth should be shared with forces that refused to communicate. To the UHA, the planet was humanity's to control. To the aliens, it was never theirs to begin with. The first military offensive was called Operation Horizon Reset. It launched in what had once been northern Alberta, now covered in towering groves of genetically restored redwoods, despite the latitude. The UHA believed this rewilded zone was one of the primary alien biosphere hubs, possibly even a staging ground for future expansion. The target was an alien structure. A massive spiral tower wrapped in flowering vines, pulsing with low-frequency resonance. Satellite scans could not penetrate it, but animal migrations consistently converged there, drawn by something deeper than instinct. The structure stood as a monument not to technology, but to restoration. It made no defense, no offense. It simply existed, peaceful, organic, immutable. The UHA mobilized. Dozens of stealth aircraft, ground divisions, orbital drops, and thermobaric warheads were deployed. Their mission was to destroy the structure and test the limits of alien tolerance. They never got close. The entire operation vanished. No explosions. No casualties reported. Just silence. Satellites showed only the unchanged forest. No scorched trees. No wreckage. No remains. It was as though the soldiers had walked into a fold in time and never returned. No one knew whether they had been killed, transported, or converted. But one thing was certain, the aliens were no longer passive. They had begun quarantining regions. Across the globe, sanctuaries emerged, zones cut off from all human influence, walled off by semi-visible fields of shimmering distortion. These Eden zones, as they became known, were massive, some the size of countries. Inside them, life flourished without interference. Weather systems behaved differently within their borders. Rain came in rhythms older than written history. Species previously extinct walked the earth again, unburdened by human interference. In one Eden zone near the ruins of the Congo Basin, observers reported glimpses of megatherium, giant ground sloths thought gone for 10,000 years. In others, sightings of prehistoric insects, ancient flora, or unidentified avian flocks were reported. The aliens had not just preserved life. They were resurrecting it. Humanity, for all its surveillance, could not understand how. Panic bred aggression. The UHA issued the Directive of Planetary Sovereignty, a global call to arms mandating that any incursion into Earth's resources without human approval was a declaration of war. Propaganda followed, emotional broadcasts showing empty farms, missing pets, jobless citizens. The aliens were painted as thieves, not saviors. Their theft of life was reframed as the greatest bioterrorism act in history. Religious and nationalist factions rallied behind the UHA. They saw the alien actions as not only a theft of biology but of soul, denying humans their role as stewards, rulers, creators. So came the second offensive, Operation Green Purge. It was not a military strike but a scorched-earth policy. The logic was perverse: if the aliens wanted to save the animals and forests, then deny them the chance. Destroy what remained. Cattle were slaughtered en masse. Forests firebombed. Sanctuaries bulldozed. Entire river ecosystems poisoned. The UHA called it strategic denial of ecological assets. The aliens did not respond with violence. They responded with silence and escalation. In the weeks that followed, a third of the Earth's surface vanished from digital maps. Not literally gone, but cloaked in alien interference. Satellites saw only blank expanses or looping static. Air travel was rerouted. Naval shipping ceased in entire ocean regions, where pods of blue whales now swam freely among unknown vessels, some appearing organic, grown rather than built. Animals continued to disappear from human control. Domestic pets. Lab animals. Endangered species. In one viral case, an entire skyscraper used as a biotech research lab was found empty, equipment intact, data erased, and every test subject gone. Only a strange, melodic vibration remained in the air. People began to vanish as well. Not at random. Hunters. Poachers. Animal traffickers. Executives in industries tied to ecological collapse. Some claimed they had been taken in the night by glowing lights. Others were never seen again. The aliens had crossed a threshold. They were no longer simply removing animals. They were removing threats. Resistance fractured. Eco-factions known as rewilders broke off from the UHA and began dismantling the old human systems, unplugging power grids, freeing factory animals, burning down labs. They saw in the aliens not gods, but redemption. A last chance to save the biosphere, even if it meant dismantling human civilization to do it. Among the rewilders were former scientists, farmers, even soldiers, those who had seen too much and chosen life over control. But not all humanity yielded. In secret installations beneath the Rockies, deep inside lunar bases, and floating above Earth in orbital weapon rings, remnants of human power prepared their final gambit. They called it echelon rain. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was worse. A viral payload, engineered to target and destabilize biological diversity itself, a gene-hacking cascade that would spread via pollen, spores, fur, and scales. Its mission, make all non-human life infertile or inert. Not kill directly, but cause extinction through stagnation. The logic was brutal: if humans could not control the biosphere, then no one should. Echelon rain was launched during the monsoon season, carried by storm clouds over Southeast Asia. Dispersed across oceans, mountains, and valleys. Its effects were to be delayed by design, subtle, creeping, untraceable. But it never reached the ground. The clouds caught fire. Witnesses across 3 continents reported the sky turning silver. A low hum shook the air. Then, streaks of violet lightning split the heavens, not downward, but upward. The rain never fell. Instead, it rose, lifted into the upper atmosphere and evaporated in seconds. Echelon rain had been neutralized. But something else happened that day. For the first time, the aliens responded. Across the globe, every remaining city experienced a synchronized blackout. Communication ceased. Satellites blinked out. The digital world collapsed into static. No warnings. No instructions. Then, on every remaining powered surface, screen, window, mirror, water, an image appeared. A child. Not human. Not alien. Something between. It stood in a forest, hand outstretched to a deer. And then it faded. The power returned. And so did the reckoning. The next day, the disappearances began. Not just animals. Not just targets. Entire cities. First, the outskirts. Rural towns, suburbs, isolated communities, all gone overnight. Houses left intact. Power still on. But no people. No voices. No signs of departure. Then it spread. One morning, the entire state of Wyoming was simply silent. Aerial footage showed no movement. Cities intact, but empty. Roads untraveled. Fires unfought. Within weeks, nearly half the human population had vanished. Panic gripped the rest. Evacuations, underground shelters, orbital lifeboats, nothing stopped the pattern. But those who remained began to notice something. The disappearances were not random. Those who had lived in balance, farmers who rotated their fields, activists who protected life, children raised with respect for animals, remained. Those who had profited, exploited, or simply ignored the warnings, did not. It was not vengeance. It was curation. The aliens were not destroying humanity. They were pruning it. What remained of the UHA dissolved. With infrastructure shattered and command chains broken, military units abandoned their posts. Some fled into the forests, trying to escape judgment. Others surrendered, dropping their weapons and begging forgiveness from a sky that offered none. The Eden zones expanded. No longer passive sanctuaries, they began to grow outward, replacing highways with root systems, cities with moss, factories with forests. Roads cracked open to reveal seeds that had lain dormant for centuries. Rivers rerouted themselves along ancient paths. Animals returned in numbers unseen since the Pleistocene. Earth was not healing. It was being rewritten. And the aliens? They stepped back. Their towers went dark. Their ships faded into sky and sea. The work was done. Those humans who remained found themselves in a new world. There was no government. No money. No power grids. But there was food, wild, abundant, unengineered. There was shelter, grown, not built. There was community, small, quiet, humble. Some wandered for months before finding each other. Others remained alone. But all shared a memory, the moment they knew the aliens had not come to conquer, but to remind. That life is not owned. It is shared. And the price of forgetting that truth had nearly been everything. The world was quiet. Not the silence of extinction, but the stillness of breath after crisis. A pause between endings and beginnings. In the years that followed the disappearance, the Earth reshaped herself with unrelenting focus. The scars left by industry, agriculture, and war began to vanish, not masked, not hidden, but reversed. Forests grew over cities, roots split concrete, glass skyscrapers turned to trellises for climbing ivy. Asphalt highways became green ribbons threaded with wildflowers. Steel towers became nesting places for vultures and condors. Dams crumbled, and rivers ran wild again, redrawing maps with water instead of borders. The air thickened with birdsong and spores. The oceans glowed with restored reefs, their colors no longer dulled by acid and oil. And across it all walked creatures once lost to time, woolly rhinos pacing through Icelandic tundra, Tasmanian tigers bounding through eucalyptus groves, flocks of great auks diving in cold Atlantic surf, mammoths treading carefully across the open Siberian plain. Earth had not returned to the past. She had moved beyond it. The present was an interweaving of what had been, what was forgotten, and what had never been seen before. And scattered across this transformed planet were the last humans. There were not many. A few million, perhaps. No more. They had not been spared for virtue alone. The aliens had not chosen them for piety or allegiance, but for alignment. These were the ones who had listened, not always perfectly, not always early, but who had chosen care over control. Scientists who had turned their knowledge to preservation, not profit. Hunters who had laid down their rifles. Children who had grown up reading animal tracks instead of social feeds. Farmers who fed their land as much as they fed from it. The aliens did not return to speak to them. There was no need. Their work had ended. They had left behind no monuments, no written commandments, no emblems of triumph. Only life. And with it, responsibility. At first, the remaining humans were lost. Gone were the systems of old, no governments, no economies, no currencies. Satellites drifted dead in orbit. Servers, banks, borders, even history, none of it mattered anymore. All that remained was land, sky, sea, and the unfathomable abundance they held. Food was everywhere, but required knowledge. The seeds of survival lay hidden in bark, in tidipools, in fungal blooms. The alien influence had made the land generous, but not tame. This was not the curated convenience of supermarkets, nor the illusion of infinite shelves. It was a living system, and it had rules. Some failed to adapt. They died quietly, often without warning, drinking from poison mushrooms, eaten by unaware predators, caught in storms that no longer followed human calendars. Others learned. They rebuilt slowly, not with tools of steel and silicon, but with memory and intuition. They wove homes from branches, heated caves with volcanic steam, fished in waters rich with forgotten species. They ate berries identified by elders, traced migratory herds without tags or drones. In time, they formed small bands, tribes not of blood, but of belief. They shared skills and stories. They mapped the reborn world, not on paper, but through tales, constellations, and the calls of animals they now lived among rather than above. Humanity had not been eradicated. It had been distilled. The question of what had happened lingered. No answers came. No alien returned to explain. Had the missing billions been relocated? Transformed? Simply erased? No records. No wreckage. No graves. Just their absence. Those who remained debated it quietly. Some believed the disappeared had been granted mercy, a second chance on another world, one yet unscarred. Others thought they had been undone, their essence returned to the soil, broken down into the elements they once corrupted. Some insisted they would return when ready. But the earth gave no clue. She was busy blooming. Within the Eden zones, now expanded to cover most of the globe, the aliens' legacy thrived. These were not parks, not preserves, not simulations. They were alive. Living, breathing systems with intelligence diffused through every organism, every root network, every cloud of pollen. Trees communicated through fungal circuits. Insects pollinated not just plants, but rhythms of time. Oceans pulsed with sonar harmonies that guided whales like ancient songs. It was more than ecology. It was orchestration. A design without a designer, too precise to be accidental, too natural to be artificial. The few humans permitted into the core of these zones, those who followed migrations without disrupting them, who fed without farming, who healed without harvesting, spoke of visions. Not hallucinations. Memories. Memories of species long gone, witnessed as though in dreams. Moments of empathy, seeing through the eyes of a bear catching salmon, or a falcon riding the wind. Some even claimed to feel the thoughts of trees, slow and vast and deeply aware. None of it could be proven. But none of it needed to be. In a world no longer ruled by human approval, belief had become intimate again, quiet, internal, reverent. Time shifted. Seasons grew stranger. Not chaotic, but layered. Spring came with bird migrations never before charted. Summer brought double blooms. Autumn stretched for months in hues not found in any palette. Winter whispered and growled, some years absent, others fierce. The moon changed, subtly, its orbit tugged by something unspoken. Tides no longer obeyed old calculations. The stars rearranged. The earth, it seemed, was no longer entirely earth. She had become something new. A hybrid world. Healed, yes. But also remade. The aliens had not only preserved her. They had elevated her. And the humans? They became a part of the pattern. Not dominant, not central. Just one thread in the weave. Children were born into this world without memory of highways, advertisements, pollution, plastic. They were taught to read clouds instead of code, to listen to bird calls instead of alerts. Their games were played in treetops and tidipools. Their elders told stories of the time before, not as legends of superiority, but as warnings of hubris. Some communities built simple stone rings, calendars to mark animal migrations or the moon's changes. Others carved symbols into tree bark, passing on tales of the change, when the Earth reclaimed herself. They did not worship the aliens. They honored them. In silence. With balance. With gratitude. Years passed. Decades. The last traces of old humanity were swallowed. Rusted shells of cities consumed by moss. Satellites fell like meteorites, leaving brief trails of fire. Digital ruins buried beneath layers of lichen and time. And then, one day, something new appeared. A spire. Tall, silver-green, shaped like a spiral of bone and leaf, rising from the ocean off what had once been California. It had no door, no markings, no sound. It stood alone. And from it came something not seen since the change. An alien. It stepped onto the shore, silent as always. It made no announcement. No command. And before it stood a girl, no older than 10, wearing a tunic of woven moss, her feet bare, her eyes calm. She reached out a hand. The alien did the same. Fingertips met. The forest behind her stirred. And then the alien vanished. The girl did not speak of what she had seen. But when she returned to her people, she sang a song in a tongue no one had heard. It was not alien. It was not human. It was both. And it marked the beginning of something new. A species reborn not from conquest, but from humility. A planet no longer inherited by force, but by right of care. A story where humans did not win by domination, but by finally, irrevocably, learning to listen. Of the age of man as master, and the beginning of Earth as home shared. Like, comment, and subscribe if you love these long HFY stories.